and welcome back to another episode of Down with the Browns. I'm back, baby. What is up, fellas?
I had something. I was going to say something, and then I just saw the Pit Vipers, and I'm just at a loss for words.
Exactly.
Well, Christian, you're looking pretty cool tonight.
Yeah.
I must
Top
say,
notch.
and I'm at a loss for words because you're bringing cool back to Down with the Browns, and you know what? Ed in Columbus knows cool, and you're in the cool club tonight, my man.
Oh yeah, and I appreciate that. And you know what that means? It's time for Breakhead News.
That's right, sir. It is time. This is Ed in Columbus with your Down with the Browns. Very good news. Myles Garrett just concluded his youth football camp this past week. Fortunately, his featured guest, Mason Rudolph, could not be present. And from all accounts, this did not put a dent in the camp's fun. Mandatory minicamp starts this week for our Cleveland Browns. And with the heat index soaring, and it is soaring, getting hot out there, guys, check your ACs because it's going to be a hot one this week. It's going to be hotter than Baker Mayfield's 2021 season. Well, at least all 2 games. And finally, with Manny's absence this week, he's joining Mac and Christian in the Down with the Browns Don't Show Up on Game Day Club. I guess I'm the only adult here. That's right. This is Ed in Columbus with your Down with the Browns. Very good news.
All right, I'll accept it.
You're looking cool. You made up for it. You know what? You missed last week. I understand you were on assignment, but you come back with the Pit Vipers looking cool like you are. I got nothing to say. You're doing your thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm just gonna let Mac take away this next segment.
So, with everything that's going on, with the Deshaun Watson cases, eventually we have to address the elephant in the room. We have to talk about it. So I've looked around. I've known this guy for a while now, and he followed pretty much the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial very well. So I figured to bring in a professional to talk about this because I just wanted an informed opinion of the situation. So, ladies and gentlemen, Walter Deptuch is coming to Down with the Browns. What's up, Walter?
How's it going,
Welcome.
you guys? What's up?
What's up?
That's right. My name is Walter. I'm a lawyer in New Jersey and New York, but I don't really do much in New York. I just hang out next to New York. I am barred there. But I'm telecasting from New Jersey. Browns fan from New Jersey, strangely enough. Other than that, I've been paying attention to a lot of the Deshaun Watson case, both the criminal and the civil aspects of it. And dude, it's a crazy case. Now we also get the New York Times article that comes out last week that's like, by the way, here's all this other details, 66 massage therapists in 17 months. Like, back when it was 40, it was like, that's a lot. Now it's 66, 17 months. That's like, if he wasn't doing dirty things to them, I would have still had a lot of questions. Like, even if you just said, this guy sees 66 massage therapists in 17 months, I would be kind of confused no matter what. But yeah, I've looked over most of the complaints. Or actually, it's a weird thing. Texas uses petitions on civil cases, which is not like most states call them. Petition and complaint are just basically the same kind of thing. They're basically pleadings. Usually, petition you use them more in bankruptcy and workers' comp, and in usually civil trial cases you use complaints, which there's really not a difference. It's just a pleading for plaintiff's side. It was just an interesting thing that I noticed when I started looking into all this. I've looked through most of the plaintiff's pleadings on this so far. I'm still like only about halfway through because there's 24 now.
Your volume went up a bit. It went up a bit.
Yeah.
Your volume.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was I mean, most of them were filed last year around April. So by the time we got to the end of April, about I think 21 or 22 of them had already been filed. And then we added 2 more in recent weeks, which was after the Real Sports segment with Ashley Solis, who was one of the first 2 plaintiffs in it. I'll try not to use their names just because people get really weird with that on the internet, and then they go ahead and they try to find the people. Even though it's like public info, I try to avoid that. I've been using numbers as to when they filed, but Solis went on Real Sports. I have no problem saying her name because she did a couple of interviews, has kind of been the face of the trial. And so I think a lot of the last 2 ones that came forward, at least one of them had said in their complaint or their petition. So I'll make the mistake of calling it a complaint a few times, because I'm just saying it from Jersey civil trial practice. But I'll go ahead, and it's basically the same concept, which is you are pleading to the court. You're starting an action in court, and that's your initial pleading as a plaintiff. And so, like, the 23 and 24, they filed their petitions. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to make this mistake 32 times. It's going to keep saying complaint. Doesn't matter how many times I filed these. So yeah, in their petition, they actually cited the Real Sports interview, and we found out a lot of details because Tony Busby had a lot of I would say fun trying to insert new details into the media via the petitions, knowing that people were going to go ahead and be like, oh, we got to go check out the petitions. And then he inserted in some of the stuff from the depositions. And then we heard some stuff from the New York Times article. The New York Times article had a lot of interesting details. Partially, we learned a lot of stuff about the massage therapist. We also found out a couple of extra therapists who didn't file lawsuits. In fact, now I think we're up to 3 that didn't file lawsuits at all that Jenny Varentes has spoken to, who's the person who did the New York Times article. She did the Sports Illustrated article last year that had to do with a massage therapist who, again, didn't file a lawsuit, came forward. That story was interesting because I think it was the first time I heard any of the stories firsthand. And that was one where, again, Watson acted a little weird. Mm-hmm. She came forward more as a way to say, listen, I just want people to know, I don't have a financial aspect into this. He acted really weird in front of me as well. Something with that case was he was thrusting his hips. I'm going back to a year now when that story came up. Mm-hmm. But he just kind of got very excited and started thrusting his hips in the air, and she kind of did not like how that whole thing went down, but she wasn't filing a lawsuit. We had 2 more that were mentioned in the New York Times article. And then, again, we also found out stuff about the grand jury investigation, and I've done a couple of interviews and videos on the grand jury coming back as a no bill. And I thought that was weird because in Texas, if you read through a lot of these petitions, a lot of these allegations probably wouldn't have even amounted to sexual assault in Texas. They have very strict sexual assault laws in Texas. They introduced a new law about 5 or 6 years ago called indecent assault, which is a misdemeanor and what a lot of these cases probably would have fallen under. And that was why it was a little weird that they even went to a grand jury, because in Texas you don't have to go to a grand jury for a misdemeanor. Same thing in New Jersey and New York. Anything that's not a year.
I don't mean
I talk way too much.
Cut you off. Yeah, no. And I don't mean to cut you off, Walter, but I wanted to retouch on that grand jury because it seems like there's a huge misconception about what it does and how it affects the case here. Can you run the audience through that? What it looks like and what it means to be either guilty or innocent in front of a grand jury?
So the way I would put it is the grand jury was a process that they came up with about 300 years ago. It's an existing process that's existed, and it's an ex parte process, meaning that it's just the prosecutor. The prosecutor comes in, and usually the prosecutor just brings in all the evidence that works for the prosecutor. Goes, hey, you know what? I heard, they'll take some of the statements, maybe if it's, if they have anything from nowadays they'll introduce social media to the grand jury. But any evidence, the police reports or whatever, they'll go in before the grand jury. Sometimes they'll have the police officers testify before the grand jury, but it's just the prosecutor. There is no representation of the defendant in a grand jury process. And every couple of years, you'll hear things about grand juries and people, you heard a lot of it about 5 or 6 years ago with Black Lives Matter and Eric Garner, the New York case where the guy, I think the video went viral with the police officer I think they were on top of the guy, and not trying to relitigate that issue, but it was another time where people talked a lot about grand juries about 5 years ago.
Wasn't he the one that was with he had a cigarette or something? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was the Lucy's. Yeah, he was selling Lucy's or something like that. And again, that was a case where I believe I think they still had a civil case anyway, but it came back no bill from the grand jury in New York. So this is not just a strictly Texas thing. It happens all around. And in this, again, like I said before, it's a process that's really provided. Like it's the prosecutor going before, basically, the grand jury is just an impaneled group of people. They do it for X amount of weeks at a time, maybe a couple of months. They do it one day a week. I had a friend of mine who sat on the federal grand jury in Newark, New Jersey, and he had to go once a month to go every Friday for it. So, but basically they go in, they read out the evidence, and then they decide if there's enough evidence. Which the evidentiary standard for an indictment is probable cause, which is the same for them to search your car. It's the same for them to get a search warrant. So it's a really low bar. Is it probable that there's something criminal going on here? Now that doesn't mean that it's a lot of times. Just because you do or don't do something, like your evidentiary bar is here, it doesn't mean that that's what a prosecutor wants to have when they go into a case.
It's the probability of winning. The probability of winning has a lot to do with it, I think.
Yeah, like especially in this case where you have, I think it was only about 10 people came forward of the 22 that we currently know of. Actually, it's not even 10 of the 22. It was 8 of the 22, and then there were 2 more criminal complaints that did not file civil cases. So you had about 10 different people. But again, when you read through all the petitions, when you hear the stories that have come out, a lot of them didn't sound like they would amount for, some kind of sexual assault charge. They sounded like they would be enough for indecent assault. There's at least one allegation there that could have counted to human trafficking because he flew somebody in from Georgia and met with her and paid for her to come to Texas and met with her in a hotel room. So there were questions as to human trafficking. I don't know if she met with the prosecutor. I believe it was in Harris County. So, and that was where 9 of them were heard. And I think the one other grand jury was a different county. But again, it's a very basic process. It's not usually something that's considered really onerous to get over. And usually also when you don't get an indictment on a felony, usually if they still wanted to charge you, they would still charge you with a misdemeanor. So like I'm saying, they probably still would have charged him with indecent exposure or indecent assault, though I think indecent exposure as well in some of these cases. For instance, I've had drug charges in New Jersey that they will send them to grand jury and then they'll come back as a no bill. And what they do is they reduce it down to, because there's no technical misdemeanor for certain drug possession in New Jersey, they'll reduce it down to what's called a possession with a failure to turn over. There's possession with the intent to, and then there was a failure to turn over. Failure to turn over is the misdemeanor version of it. Weird phrase for failure to turn over drugs to the police is basically what they're saying.
Here's my drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Failure to turn over the drugs to the police is what they call it. It's a weird phrasing because they don't have like misdemeanor heroin possession and misdemeanor amphetamine possession. So what they do is they just calculate, all these other ones fall into this category. So, but then that's usually what happens. They'll come back, they'll give you this misdemeanor charge that in New Jersey is just weirdly phrased, and I don't know why they do it like that. And our drug law has only recently been kind of getting changed over the last couple of years. But again, so with the grand jury, it's really more of a base level process. It's almost usually entirely by the prosecutor. It's usually just evidence by the prosecutor, presented by the prosecutor, and they don't have to present exculpatory evidence, and usually they don't. In this case, it sounds like they did. And in other cases they do because maybe they don't want to take the case to trial, maybe because they're saying, okay, well, we know this is going to come in. So there's different reasons why they might provide exculpatory evidence. They might say, I don't want to be the face of the reason why this didn't go forward. So let's go to the grand jury and I'll provide the exculpatory evidence and then they'll get the blame. And because it's a confidential process, they don't know.
I have a question. And yes, I'm wearing this awesome merchandise, Down with the Browns, Ed in Columbus, with a tie. So a T-shirt with a tie. So Walter, I apologize. I'm not as crazy as I appear, but I do have a question. And this is from Legality.
Is it about the denim jacket? Because I got them indoors and everything. It's just kind of more of a look thing.
That's a beautiful look. You're beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's better than wearing a T-shirt and a tie. So
it is. It absolutely.
I mean, it worked for Avril Lavigne in like the early 2000s.
I liked Skater Boy. That was good stuff. Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
But to the legality questions in Cleveland, we have a lot of people arguing on Twitter and in the media and everything with Deshaun. Now, there's a lot of people that are outraged, and it's more of a PR thing because you're a lawyer. I want your take on this. And so Deshaun Watson is a grand jury did not indict him. There's 2 grand juries that did not indict him. So if I walk down the street and Deshaun walks down the street, would that be the same as if, say, Deshaun had charges pressed on him and he was found not guilty? So we got three people. We got Deshaun, not grand jury indicted like he is, current Deshaun. We got Deshaun that went through a trial, but was found not guilty, and myself. We're walking down the street. In the eyes of the law, not the PR, but the eyes of the law, we're all the same. We're all, you know what I'm saying? Is that correct? Shouldn't it be by law enforcement and how we're treated if you're found not guilty of something, if you're never indicted on something, or somebody like me who hasn't committed any crime and we're just walking down the street? In the eyes of the law, we're the same. Is that not? I mean, that's correct, right?
Yeah, and how the state handles you and how the federal government handles
there
you.
Should
and
be there should be no bias towards you from your employer, from anything, because legally you did nothing wrong from a legal standpoint.
Well, currently there's still 24 civil
Well, I know that has to.
So
I know that has
that's
to
a
play
different.
out.
So
that has to play out.
So I what I'll say is that there is a difference between social and criminal. Criminal is the government is going ahead and sending you to jail, right? Criminal is you have now a charge on your permanent record that says you did this illegally.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because when I see people on Brown's Twitter attacking and eviscerate each other, which some of it's funny. Look, guys, on Brown's Twitter, if you want to go after each other, I'm in Columbus. I love the Cleveland Browns. If you want to attack each other, do it. Just do it wittingly and don't attack each other's personal looks or anything like that. Other than that, go after each other. It's fun entertainment. But my point is this: they're arguing in a PR standpoint. But when I say, look, I don't want to get involved. I want to talk football, and legally, he's the same as me. He's just right now. Deshaun Watson's status legally is the same as mine. There's no, until something happens or there's something, some finale to it. Then why can't we just chill and just let it play out? I guess that's my whole argument with this is just chill until let the legal process play out. And when I get that answer, don't attack me and like I'm insensitive or something. I just want to talk about football.
I mean, I agree with you on that. I think there's a difference between how you like waiting to see how it plays out, and also I think there could be people who have issues with how the Browns handled everything, because like I personally was hoping he would be innocent, like even before he was a Brown. Like I covered this before he was a Browns player, before the twinkle in Andrew Berry's eye. I talked about this case. So I always kind of sat there and said, listen, there could be a thing of maybe it's somewhere in the in between. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he didn't sexually assault people, but maybe he did some things that maybe you shouldn't do. There's a long range of things he could be, that could be in between A and B. You can still have problems with how the Browns approach things. And you can also be aware of how the NFL approaches things. Like, for instance, you don't have to be guilty for the NFL to punish you. And we saw that with Zeke Elliott. We saw that with Ben Roethlisberger. And also, as a Browns fan, we're well aware of how people talked about Ben Roethlisberger for the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
I heard it, but I never said it. I never said I hear it, though.
Well, Walter, and I apologize because I already asked you this question weeks ago, but I have to repeat it because I want to hear your answer and have you tell these guys. So I asked you a while ago when Andrew Berry was in this press conference, right? He said that this was this odyssey, that they hired a legal counsel, investigators, and they looked into this. But one of the things that they're heavily criticized on is that they didn't talk to any of the defendants. Now, Andrew Berry said, that he was advised by his legal counsel to not talk to the defendants because it would interfere with the investigation. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, so I remember us having this conversation. So here's the thing. I'm going to call a good degree of BS on that. First off, because I think maybe where we could start off with that is maybe they had talked to their legal counsel before Deshaun Watson became available. So remember, they had done this investigation almost 5 months, I think now we're hearing it. They started this look into Deshaun Watson into November. So maybe the one thing I'll give Andrew Berry the benefit of the doubt on, because again, I'm an Andrew Berry fan up until this point, again, because I think some people could have issues on the process for this. And this is one of the issues I had a process on, where it is, my one area where I'll give him the benefit of the doubt is maybe he said, talk to those lawyers earlier in the process, and they said, don't reach out to them. I think you had time after it came back no bill to where there was no criminal indictment, so that you're not hindering a police investigation. All you have to do is give somebody a phone call and say, hey, can we talk to them for 5 minutes? Or can they do a Skype interview? Or again, you reach out to their attorney, and another dozen of these plaintiffs had not filed a criminal complaint as of that moment at all during this case. So we know that there's at least a dozen out there who talking to them would not have been hindering a police investigation. And in fact, now we are finding out that the prosecutor in Harris County who handled 9 of the 10 complaining witnesses, we found out that she did not allow the police to talk to the other dozen or so individual witnesses that have filed civil lawsuits. So we know that there were people who didn't have criminal lawsuits going. It really sounded more of like we're trying to put up a wall of like, you know what, this is probably a little bit of BS kind of deal. Because again, like there was a dozen who weren't, and also reaching out to their attorney wouldn't have been a problem. Now, I think more of that is when you are now in the process of, we have like 3 or 4 days to do this. Do we really want to be reaching out to Tony Busby? And then all of a sudden he leaks to the media. Although, let's be real here. Everybody knew by the time they went to go meet up with Deshaun Watson, they were looking into trading for Deshaun Watson because it was leaked like on Saturday. Like there was literally, I remember that week very well because I remember the no bill coming back on Friday, and that was March 11th. And I literally did like, I think 2 videos that day on it, because I was on another show, and then I went ahead and did my own video on it. And then literally the next day, we're seeing Twitter reports of, the Browns are in on Deshaun Watson. So,
well, that Saturday, the 12th, was when we traded for Amari Cooper. And we're like, oh, Baker has his weapon. And then the Deshaun Watson stuff to the Browns starts heating up. They're like, oh, they got Amari Cooper for Deshaun Watson. And we're like, that's not true. I remember me and Mac was like, hey, that's not true.
And at that point, I think it was already there were already rumors at that point too. Like there was literally the little, I think who's the one, Andrew Wilson. He's a Texans guy, and I think he's also now tied to Pro Football Network. He was talking about this, and he's usually not one of those guys to just kind of like leak out information that's not like kind of verified. So when he was talking about, I think Aaron Wilson, I might be getting the names wrong here. So many names now on the Twitterverse with reporting on stuff. And
that's I got 2 underscores in my name. I put 2 underscores in my name for that very reason. I don't want to be.
That'll distinguish you. Yes, the 2 underscores. Yes. The double underscore works a lot as far as people will remember the double underscore. They'll be like, wait, the guy had 2 underscores, different parts of the name. Ed underscore in underscore Columbus. Not to be confused with Ed underscore in Columbus.
You get it. That's what Walter. You're definitely, you got to be successful at what you do because your logic and your thought process is spot on.
Thank you.
I got one last question here, and it's just nuts because it almost seems like, and I want to be fair and balanced here. There's a huge cases here against Deshaun Watson. So what does his defense look like after all of this information comes out? Like, if you were in his defense, what would that look like?
I would have told them all to shut up 3 weeks ago. Why are you guys all talking? Half the freaking problem right now, half the reason why there's 2 more plaintiffs is because Deshaun Watson said something in his presser. You go to your presser, you say, I can't talk about it. No comment. I am in the middle of a civil case. I am not discussing it right now. I don't care how many of you Cleveland reporters want to catch me off the guard and be like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Why is his attorney running around saying getting hand jobs are okay as long as you don't pay extra for them? Why is the other attorney going on Real Sports with Brian Gumbel and saying, oh, well, she saw multiple other attorneys before she saw Busby? So what? I'm sure Deshaun Watson did before he hired Rusty Hardin. What's with this whole, he had all the plaintiffs are represented by the same attorney? Yeah, because they all heard, wait a second, the same attorney's taking these cases, and they went, this guy's handling this already. He's familiar with the facts. I don't have to go look for my own. Is it shocking that there's not one that went to another? Not really, but okay, maybe I would have expected 1 or 2 to go to a different attorney. Maybe because they didn't trust that Busby would have all their interests in the same spot, but they all did. So I don't that doesn't mean anything, though.
Yeah, because when you class action like those women, why would you get your own attorney and stuff? It's harder for Deshaun Watson. Eventually, it's going to lead to cash. Let's be real. So if you add your name to the class action lawsuit, it just puts more pressure on Deshaun Watson to just settle and be done with it. And so it's just easier that way. So I definitely agree with that. So I agree that Busby should have shut his mouth, and he made it easier to pull the 2-point.
Well, Hardin.
He went from 20
Busby actually, that was my initial problem with Busby, was that Busby did say a lot of things in the media first. He was the one who announced it via Instagram. And to me, that was very weird as an attorney, because I would never announce my client's case via Instagram. It's always Twitter, everybody. Right. Come on. That's where all the reputable attorneys announce their says. No, but my point is that it was very weird that he did that. Like it was. And that's where I had my issues with Busby. And then Harden going out there and going on going on radio shows and stuff. That's not helping your client. Like the number one thing you tell your client is shut up and don't say anything. Well, why are you going on radio shows and going like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and say things that probably don't sound exactly great for my client?
I mean, were these just like him releasing this information? Was it random, or did something like come up in the cases? Because it's almost like, well, I mean, at the press conference, he said, "I'm 100% innocent. I didn't do any of this stuff," and then now it's just like, okay, well,
which led to him getting 2 more plaintiffs to file a lawsuit.
Yeah,
So.
I call that the 2-point conversion. They pulled a 2-point conversion.
I'm sorry about interrupting you there.
I thought you were going to go to Johnny Depp. I thought we were going to talk about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. I don't know.
Well, see, here's the thing. If we're going to talk about that, this is almost the exact opposite kind of case. The side who's changed their position a lot is Deshaun Watson's team. Deshaun Watson in the beginning said, I never even had sex with any of these women. And now that's changed. And that's in his answer. That's in his answer that he filed when these cases were initially filed back in like a year ago.
That's not
and now
good.
He's had to admit that he's had sex with a few of them. And again, now we're getting more of them coming out. And we also, the other weird one is with Plaintiff 23, we know that they reached out to her back when these cases were filed. So basically Busby and Harden's team and Deshaun's team did some background research. They said, well, we don't know who filed cases, right? So Deshaun, give us your phone, give us all the information for all the people you've seen in the last, 2 years or whatever that were massage therapists who gave you massages that could be filing these lawsuits. And they took out Plaintiff 23 to dinner. Well, the other thing is Deshaun Watson failed to turn over his DMs, his Instagram, and his cell phone after saying, I deleted my Instagrams after meeting with these people and I changed over cell phones. So I don't have any of that information.
It's coincidence. It's just coincidence.
Yeah, but then what's going to end up happening is and this actually happened in the Amber Heard Johnny Depp. It almost happened. This was a big case. This is a big part of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. Is that Johnny Depp turned over his phone, Amber Heard did not.
Yeah.
And they almost had a motion for sanctions on it where they were allowed to there was a really big discussion as to whether they should have been allowed to include jury instructions to say one side prejudiced the other party because you failed to turn over evidence. And then there's also, again, you can fine them. There's sanctions. It's like being in the NFL at that point, where you can go ahead and fine them for not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. That could be a big issue here where, hey, you didn't turn over your cell phone, but we now know that you reached out to this plaintiff right here. And we know that by the way, your attorneys took her out to dinner.
Do you think it was better than a McDonald's meal? No offense to McDonald's, but I'm sure. I'm sure. Her meal
I have the name of the restaurant. I could pull that up. Actually, wait a second. Hang on.
The name of the restaurant.
Well, all I'm trying to say.
I got it right on top because it's around top of my list. It is Eddie V's Prime Seafood. So it wasn't cheap, I don't think, unless Eddie V's is not a good seafood. Anybody in Texas, like shout us out. Let us know Eddie V's is a good place.
Walter, my point was this. The point was this. Her meal, like most of my meals, don't have a number in front of them. You know what I'm saying? We don't have a number, so it's a high class meal. Mine's like the number 1 from McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? We'll get. I'm sure that number 23. She didn't have a number in front of her meal. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. But I think the point of that was more to do like they were trying to see if she filed a lawsuit, which that's okay. Like it's a little weird because if you know that she's represented, which they don't, so they had the argument of we don't know she's represented, but there becomes kind of ethical issues when you deal with unrepresented people and then also people who are represented by an attorney. For instance, if you are represented by an attorney and I'm in direct conflict with you, I'm not allowed to talk to you at all. And that's actually a big ethical violation. So not saying that they thought that. They clearly were like, we're doing our due diligence. We don't know. We don't think so. But like you said, they took her out to dinner. They were trying to do.
They wined and dined her. Dined her.
So
yeah, they were trying to say don't come out and say anything negative.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pull on Michael Scott right here. So I'm just going to ask this as a curious Browns fan. Explain to me this like I'm a 5-year-old. Is this going to end up good or is this going to end up very bad?
Wow.
That's
That's a loaded question for us.
It could be a year that he's suspended. It could be 6 weeks. It could be we have no clue. It could be that they put him on the. Now that we have 2 more people who came forward, it could be the commissioner's exempt list, especially if one of them files criminal charges and they hadn't filed criminal charges previously. And if especially now that we have this awareness to the prosecutor having this relationship with Rusty Hardin, which, by the way, I'll get Rusty Hardin and Tony Busby confused 32,000 times.
No, that's yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
2 names that come off like cartoon characters. Who named these people?
I
What's
was- I
going
was-
on? By the way, I don't think Rusty's not even like.
ridiculous. You're walking in there as a lawyer and your name's Rusty. Like just go by Rusty.
Hardin. Rusty
And
Hardin.
Busby. Like, by the way, if you look at his website, no B's on the website. There's none. I'm offended. There's no B theme. Nothing. That should be
Like, not even a little
B
play with it.
everything.
Not even.
It's the B movie.
Yeah, man, just like bees everywhere. Just have like a bee in a lawyer outfit, arguing before the judge.
I'll make them buzz off.
But there you go, like Rusty, yeah, these names are like very cartoonish. It sounds like a character they would have came up with in Family Guy. So like I don't like this is what Peter Griffin would have used as his attorney. Rusty versus Tony Busby.
Yeah.
So the names are gonna get confusing no matter what, because you're gonna be like, these names don't sound real. Like, but again, it's as far as what are the consequences, I would still put it very unlikely that he gets criminally recharged again, because first off, like I said before, indecent assault seemed like the most applicable charge. There's a 2-year statute of limitations on misdemeanors in Texas. We're coming up to the end of a lot of those. That's why you're going to see anybody who still has a civil case start filing now. So like that's why plaintiff 23 and 24 filed also, because their statute of limitations would be coming up in the next couple of months on the civil cases and the criminal cases. So because the civil and criminal for both like this kind of case would be 2 years, both for the indecent assault charge and for the civil litigation personal injury intentional tort charge. They are both 2-year statute of limitations. But there's still some of them that still have time. And if they didn't come forward before and they wanted to file a criminal complaint now, they still have that time. I'm not sure how that would go. It could go widely different ways. He could settle them all tomorrow and be like, here's $22 million because the Browns paid me all this money. It's all guaranteed and just go away. And then they all go away and they all made millions of dollars because Deshaun Watson had some very weird kinks, apparently. Like at minimum, it's like, why are you doing this? Because there's at least some kind of like he wanted it. Maybe he was hoping that they were just going to do it with him. Whatever it is, it's just like, you know what? That's what you paid for. You got $230 million. Throw $22 million at it and be done. That's the only thing I could argue for him is he's going to throw $25 million at them to go away, and that's what he's got to do. So that's the good news, right? He's got $25 million to give him.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Yeah.
Jimmy Haslam made sure of that for you guys.
That's
So
a good thing.
yeah, that's the one green light at the end of the tunnel. What's the NFL going to do is the other question, and the NFL might. But there's also a couple of them now who have been like, we take this as an issue of, we know at least with a couple of them, they're like, this isn't about the money. He still hasn't learned his lesson. He's running around saying he did nothing wrong. Instead of, like I said before, if he shut up and didn't say anything, he would be in so much of a better place. His attorney would have shut up and not said anything. He would have been in a better place. So again, and that's the thing that's always going to screw you is when you say things, people, anybody's ever watched Law and Order, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That also works in civil court too. It's called statement by party opponent. So all of a sudden you say something and they're like, well, Deshaun, we heard you said this on the media that you didn't do anything wrong, but you don't think this was not doing anything wrong? So I think the NFL is going to start looking at this and being like, all right, like either settle this now and you got till the end of this month to figure it out, or we're going to bring the hammer. Now, whatever that hammer is, could be only 10 games, could be a whole season, could be that they put him on the commissioner's exempt list. There could be a dozen different things that they do. It didn't sound like they were into the commissioner exempt list issue. Like they were kind of moving away from that. But now I think they realize like, oh, there's more of these lingering out there. And just because the grand jury came back no bill, there's not double jeopardy on a grand jury charge.
Yeah, they can hear. Yeah, you're right.
So they could recharge him. There could, especially if they felt like, especially for sexual assault, that has a much longer statute of limitations. That can linger a little bit longer if there's any of them that they really feel like they have a good case for sexual assault. Like I said, indecent assault seemed like the more applicable charge because there was about a lot of them that fell into that category where whether you're talking about releasing fluids on people or touching them with a certain appendage, which is what seems to be consistent through a lot of these complaints. Yes, I'm trying to be very not very graphic, everybody.
Yeah.
I did one video on this, and trying not to be graphic about this became almost comical. Like it was, you ever do a video on TikTok, you're not allowed to say certain words. It just became literally me using 32 euphemisms. But yeah, so like I said, it's the euphemisms that you'd have to use to describe some of these. Some of them are a lot more lighter. And I think my issue that I'm noticing through these is that there's not just a pattern of conduct, but the masseuses got less and less technically experienced. It went from the first, like, if you look at the time frame, not from when they filed, but from when these things happened, it went from a massage therapist who was actually worked with other professionals and had dealt with other professional, like football players and athletes, to makeup artists and physical trainers and like people who had no massage therapy license.
I'm good with my hands. I'm dainty. I'm very dainty, but I think I'm pretty good. Like,
Shane will put a wig on you. Deshaun will reach out to you in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It really has gotten to the weird thing of like, what's going on here, dude? Like, what were you doing and why did they get worse? Like, if anything, if I'm going through these weird channels, I would think they would at least be getting better if there was something like above board. Like I said, it might just be that he had a weird kink and that he didn't mean anything by it. And there's like levels of things here. Like maybe he didn't, sexually assault somebody, but maybe what he did was still some kind of improper conduct. There's a range of activities that have happened in this that are alleged. And the one thing I keep coming back to is it's a lot of different activity that is like all very similar. And it's like I said, the indecent assault probably would have been the best charge if you were going to bring a charge against him criminally. He could still, the other thing that came up as a discussion, I don't know if this will ever happen. There was an investigation by the FBI. There's discussion as to whether the FBI was investigating him or one of the plaintiffs.
Yeah, I heard that for laundering or something, or trying to extort money or something.
So one of the plaintiffs. So again, I know none of us will know because, to be honest, the FBI, if they're calling Busby, they're probably saying we're looking into Deshaun Watson. If they're calling Rusty, they're saying we're looking into we're looking into the plaintiff because you're going to work with us better. You're going to listen to us. Oh, wait a second. Oh, we're looking into one of them. So we don't know. So there was both the discussion. I know which plaintiff it is because she was actually one of the earlier ones to file. And it's in Deshaun Watson's answer about that particular plaintiff that there was discussions of, and actually that was a weirder thing too, is I haven't seen that much like factual input put into an answer. It might just be a Texas thing because usually when you do an answer in most states and at the federal level, it's you file the complaint and then the other side files their answer, and usually how they respond to the complaint is admit, deny. You could say, I'm denying everything in there. And then you can maybe have a counterclaim. Deshaun Watson's not filing any counterclaims here because I don't think he wants none of that craziness. And also there's nothing to counterclaim for, like in the reality of it. Unless the one woman was actually extorting him, which if she was, I think he would have maybe included something in there about that.
Yeah.
But that's the only that's the only real strong argument for Deshaun Watson. That's also one of the few that sounded like an SA charge that maybe would have been successful. So that was the one with there was an oral element to it. I'm not going to go into deeper detail, but it was one that, like, if you read it, it comes off very dark. It's very disturbing, and But that's also one where there's the discussion of, in the answer, the potential extortion claim. And I don't know. This is one of the things we won't know until somebody releases that information to us. The depositions, the reason why Jenny Varentes was able to write what she was able to write is because one side, probably the plaintiffs, released the depositions over to Jenny Varentes and she reviewed them. Same thing with, as far as getting the information for the grand jury, she sent an Oprah request to, Harris County Harris County's prosecutor's office, a couple of other places, and she probably got some documents back. She probably got some of the phone records between the prosecutor and Rusty Hardin. So we know from what her work was on it, but that's the only way we're going to find anything out, unless somebody go ahead and start sending out Oprah requests to places in Texas. In which case, now it's going to become, that's a lot of extra effort and work. Reading these petitions was hard enough. Like I said, I'm only halfway through them, and I'm like, this is exhausting, man. Why 60? Why so many? Could you have spaced them out? Stick to one? I don't know.
Yeah. No. Well, on that note, as big as a headache that we have with this whole situation, we do have training camp this week. So I wanted to take some time here and talk about, standouts, who you're looking for, interesting storylines, and to do two apiece. Christian, I know that you had one of the players that we talked about before going live, so I want to start with you here. Who are you looking for this week?
So I'm looking for Jed Wills. I mean, there's been a lot of hate on my man. He didn't have the greatest year 2. He showed some promise in year 1. He's going into his 3rd year. He's going to be 23 years old. My boy from Lexington, Kentucky, got big hopes for him this year. We really need him to be the blind side for whoever's going to be playing quarterback for us this year, whether it's Brissett, whether it's Dobbs, whether it's Watson, if he gets to play this year. After all that earlier, I don't know. It's making me lose hope on that. But anyways.
We don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. But whoever
like I said, he's got a lot of money now.
Yeah.
Throw all the money.
Yeah. But I think Wills, he's not been on social media. If you guys noticed, it looks like he's kind of locked in. Year 3 in Bill Callahan's O-line scheme. He's going to take that leap.
He's also not doing as many commercials anymore because Baker Mayfield's not going to be there. So
that's going to be awkward. I wonder what they're going to do there.
Maybe it's just going to be Jed Wills on the commercials. Now he's moved in.
It's repossessed.
Baker's like, here, you can have the lease.
He's running the book club now. He's running the book club.
Yeah, not for nothing. I would dig that one. I would dig that watching Jedrick Wills' book club.
You think they give it to Bernie?
What's your second one?
Second one?
Mm-hmm.
Wrong way. This guy right here, Kareem Hunt.
The Cleveland boy. All right.
The Cleveland man. Running back number 2, Kareem Hunt. He got that dog in him. He ain't got no heart. He got a dog in there. He going boom, 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 and he's going boom, boom. And I mean, once he went down last year, you kind of saw that riff in the offense. I think when Nick Chubb ain't I'm not saying Nick Chubb ain't always going to have it, but going back to the Bears and the Texans games, he wasn't getting it. You throw Kareem in there, he's jumping and floating over top of people, and then Nick Chubb always does his thing in the 4th.
Well, they give him those red zone touches, and I've said this many times. Kareem Hunt was, before he went down, he was the offensive MVP, and since he came into the league, so if you look at his total games and Nick Chubb's total games and total TDs, Kareem Hunt has several more, and that's just simply because he's too good out of the backfield running routes. One of the first days in OTAs, Nathan Zaguro from Cleveland Browns Daily immediately pointed out some of those angle routes that he's running out of the backfield. So yeah, I really want to see Kareem Hunt this year and healthy. Now for my first one is somebody that's jumped off the page that a lot of people have been talking about, John Johnson. Now I thought he started off kind of rocky. Last year he was coming into a new defense. He had to wear the green dot and communicate and call the plays in from the sideline. So, struggled a little bit, but I thought he finished pretty well. It dug into some of his stats here, and he allowed a 58% completion percentage, and it was a 70 passer rating when targeted. So, a lot of people talk about him as a box safety, but I do think that he's our best coverage safety that we have on the team, and you need a center fielder back there, especially when you have guys like Ronnie Harrison and Grant Delpa that play a little bit better towards the line of scrimmage. Somebody has to play on the back end. And the second one is a guy. Now, I'm still not sure if he's going to make the team, but they gave him a solid flyer here, undrafted free agent Isaiah Weston. Now, fun fact about him, Now, he is from the University of Northern Iowa, a little bit smaller school, but he was second in all of college football last year with 23.9 yards per catch. There was only one other player. So of course, somebody's first argument is going to say, well, he comes from a smaller school. Well, his biggest game was against North Dakota State, where he had 180 yards and a touchdown, one of which came off of a 69-yard bomb. So, he's got a big frame, 6'4", ran a 4.40, and that's what this wide receiver corps needs. They need somebody to take the top off on the defense, to stretch the field a little bit. And with the question mark that is Anthony Schwartz, not saying that he won't take that leap, but you want to have multiple guys for that role just in case of that fail safe. So, John Johnson and Isaiah Weston are my two guys. Ed, what do you got for us?
Well, I got confused because exactly what the question was, because when Christian said Jedrick Wills, I'm just, it's just sorry. It's just my thing. Look, it's the whole thing with the people that don't actually touch the football. I think, I just, sorry.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. I was wondering if you just had issues with his cankles.
I keep on getting rolled up. I mean, we can talk after we're done with the show, and we might actually agree on that issue. But
I'm a big Jed Wills fan. I apologize. I didn't mean to lean into I'm going to go ahead and knock him.
But you had fun with me. You had fun making fun of him with me. That shows you.
Oh, I make fun of everybody, dude. That's my favorite part of football. I get to make fun of everybody. It's like, what are they going to do? Find me in Jersey? Browns people? Oh, you're going to have to come to Jersey. I got to hide behind the Giants. I'm not a Browns. I'm a Giants. So what are you talking about?
That's right. You have plausible deniability. But my two guys are going to be DPJ and Schwartz, and here's why.
Oh, there we go.
We talked about Fuller. We talked about getting all these guys that can come in and stretch the field. Now, I think with Njoku, that's to stretch the field, and hopefully they'll do that. So I think those guys, because we always talk about who's going to step up and be that true number two. In a perfect world, in a perfect cap world, in a perfect everything for the Cleveland Browns, if DPJ, a 6th-round pick, because I think sometimes too much pressure on the kid. He was a 6th-round pick. Schwartz was a 3rd-round pick. So really, when it comes to the pressure of performing at the position, I mean, DPJ, come on, that comes to sack. Now, I will say next year, we're going to find out what he's truly made of, even if it's Jacoby Brissett or whoever the quarterback is, because I think in this new Stefanski system, I think that we're going to run, especially with Amari Cooper, the way he runs routes, and I think with Bell, they just run such routes that are so different than what other NFL teams can do because of the verticalness of them, the horizontal, like how Kareem Hunt catches balls out the backfield, why he's so good. We have wide receivers that, whether you want to call him a 1 or this or that, I don't want to argue. Amari Cooper is going to be a 1 in our system because of the things he can do. David Bell's going to be one of the best wide receivers as a rookie. You know why? Better than Olave and all those guys and stuff like that. Here's why: the routes that they're going to run, it's in the system. It really is, especially wide receivers. Look at New England with Edelman and Wes Welker and stuff like that. Not the most gifted wide receivers, but if you can just run those routes, and especially with a fantastic quarterback in Deshaun Watson when he finally eventually hits the field. But those are my two guys. We got to step it up because I don't want to have to go out and spend more capital on a free agent wide receiver or somebody or trade for one. I think there's enough guys, there's enough athletes in the wide receiver room. Now I just need them to go out and perform, and hopefully they'll do that.
I agree.
All right, Walter, who do you got here?
I want to see what's going on with Jack Conklin. I don't know if he's going to be here ready or not, because that's the thing. I thought I saw a report that he was on track, but I don't know if
correct. Because they interviewed him the other day. So yeah.
Oh, there's an interview. God damn.
Well, they interviewed Kevin Stefanski, and he said that that Jack Conklin was on track with his physical therapy, so he will be ready. Now, when that is, I don't know, but they're saying that he's on track. So I guess it's a good thing, right?
Because that's a big deal. Like missing Conklin, I think after when you look at all the injuries to the offensive line last year, Conklin was another one that was like, that's a big one, especially the injury he's coming off of. You named 3 of the wide receivers. I think Harrison Bryant, and wanting to know what his role is in this new offense. Now that they don't have Austin Hooper, it looks like I saw some video today that they're running a little bit more pistol.
Yes.
Are they going to run a lot of 11 personnel more? Are they going to try and stick with the 12 personnel but run out of pistol, kind of like what they do with Lamar Jackson down in Baltimore? I'm very intrigued because I don't know. Actually, Stefanski, that's where I want to know. I want to know what he's doing with this offense because we now have an offense that clearly you were going to adapt to Watson. There's a reason why they went out and got Dobbs. There's a reason why they went out and got Brissett. And they went into this offseason with the intention, after they traded for Watson, they said, full reset. We're not keeping anybody who's similar, we're not keeping the old scheme together. Like, we're not making an effort to keep the old team together. Whether it was Jarvis, Hooper, Baker, Treader, they said full reset. You know, we need the money anyway. We're signing big money contracts for big money dudes. How are you adapting this offense to fit what Watson fits well and what the rest of the other QBs that are going to be in that room fits well? Which is why I never really quite got the understanding of Baker's going to go into this offseason. They might keep Baker and they might play him. Why? You went ahead and added 3 other quarterbacks. You literally don't have enough room in the QB room. You're going to have Baker sit in an ancillary room by himself being like, I feel this is like segregation now. I'm confused. It's reverse, though. I'm in the ancillary QB room. What's going on here? Practice squad player? What's going on? Should I just join the wide receivers and they just hang out with people who didn't like me last year? What's going on? So there's as far as going in which direction they should all go, I'm always interested in offensive line because that's been I think Mac tweeted this earlier, talked about the 2014 offensive line. That was such a brilliant year where they had Alex. You look at the name on it, Batonio, Mac, Thomas, Schwartz, all guys who ended up becoming major money guys in the NFL. Literally one dude on that team was a Jag, and that was John Greco.
Right.
One of the best names. Greco. He should have gotten an insurance commercial.
Well, that season was nuts. They had that great offensive line. They had a 3-headed running back room with Ben Tate, who ended up getting taken over by Terrence West and Isaiah Crowell. And if anybody has any information about what Terrence West or Isaiah Crowell is currently doing, that's what I'm saying. Like these were kind of low-level guys, and they were rushing
Walmart
for like a total of like 200 yards a game. And they blew out the state. In the last, it was.
Well, I remember being at the Cincinnati game in Cincinnati, 2014, when they went in there and kicked Cincinnati's tail, man.
I remember watching
not the Manziel game.
Oh, not the Manziel game.
No, where it was like they all ran for like either 100 yards or multiple touchdowns.
Yeah,
all 3 of them. It was one of the craziest running back. Like we didn't even need a quarterback. This is all we needed was the offensive line. These 3 running backs.
I remember Buster Screens had 2 picks, and the first pass by Andy Dalton was a pick by I want to say it was Craig Robertson, or whatever, however you say his last name.
Yeah,
and dude, that place
Craig
went
Robertson.
nuts. Yeah. Dude, it was so funny because you got to see all the fair weather Bengals fans
that was the
leave
highlight
like
of the
halftime.
year. Once you won that game,
for sure.
That was the last year before like the Browns really went deep.
Yeah, and no, you didn't win a game after that, Mac. They didn't win a game after that, Christian. They went 7-4 after they won that game. They finished 7-9.
Yeah,
they won one more. They went to 6, and then they beat Atlanta and Atlanta.
Oh, that's right, 26-24, the comeback.
Yeah,
the comeback. Yep. Wow.
Man, that was
what a waste.
That was a good year.
You want to talk about
the offensive line is very important. At least it has been for Cleveland. With Watson, it might not be. Because that's one of those things you have to key in on is you traded for this guy, you gave him a big money contract. Then you gave him that money, and like again, you look at what he had in Houston. He also held the ball for a really long time in Houston. That was part of what made him kind of good, is that he was able to like extend the play, see the field. The offensive line shouldn't be a key thing here anymore. So how are they going to the guys who they do have that they kept in the building? Harris, how's Harris going to do? Conklin. I'm now naming multiple names. Give me 2, and I said Stefanski. I'm just name dropping.
You're 2 for 2,
I just wanted to prove that I actually watched this team at this point.
No, definitely. So one thing I wanted to bring up is Pat McAfee had Ian Rappaport on his show today, and they just broke the Vegas odds again. Now they just randomly shifted. The Browns were at plus 200. Now they're plus 270. And the other one that changed was the Ravens went from plus 200 to plus 160. Now, I don't know whether or not that is due to the information with Deshaun Watson and Vegas thinks, hey, he might get suspended more than we initially thought, or Lamar Jackson came back into the building, which is, again, super interesting. Nobody's talking about, but Lamar's contract is still on the table. He's not yet signed, and he's playing into this 5th year. So, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Christian, I'll start with you.
I love it because Lamar's just out there chilling. He's just like, you know what? I ain't worried about it. 'Cause he knows he's going to Miami next year.
You think so?
Chilling. Oh yeah, he's gone, dude.
Yeah,
He ain't staying. He's gone.
I'm gonna keep it short, Mac, and say he gone. He's gonna have Tyreek Hill in Miami next year, South Beach, bringing the heat. I mean, I don't like it as a Cavs fan and as a Cleveland fan. Miami, the Marlins back in '97. It just seems like those people down there, it's not they don't appreciate their teams, but when you're in a finals game and you got fans leaving before the game's over with, I don't know, maybe they don't appreciate it as much. So, they probably will get Lamar, but I think Lamar's like Vince Young. I think his better days are behind him. I don't think he's going to have the flame out quite as bad as Vince Young did, but I don't know. I go ahead, go down to Miami. The ones that Cleveland Browns will be playing for the AFC Championship in the upcoming years will be Kansas City, Buffalo. You know what I'm saying, with Allen and Mahomes. So I don't know. I mean, good luck, Lamar. Great weather down there. I hope you enjoy South Beach. I mean, so good luck. And plus, I don't have to see him Baltimore kicking our butts, because as much as I'm talking crap about Lamar, he does beat us quite a lot. So,
dude, I remember that draft. I was such a Lamar fan, and when he went to Baltimore, I was like, "You Giants, why didn't you guys take him, Giants?" As a fan of the Browns, the Giants just made me more annoyed at the Giants for making stupid moves. Why do you guys keep doing these things? Why do you let the Ravens get people? But actually, I think Lamar's there at least for another year after this, because they have the franchise tag and they'll just tag him.
That's true.
So I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I think going to Mac's point though, I think that did play into it. Is he showed up, and now we don't know if Watson's going to be playing, and then there's even more ambiguity, and I think that plays into it. I also you look at what each of those teams did this offseason. And this might be the one off season where there's at least areas where you feel like there might have been a downgrade in talent in certain areas, especially offensive line. Because you have Conklin coming off the patella tear, Harris replacing Treader, Wills were kind of in a weird we don't know zone. We have the two great guards, Bitonio and Teller. But generally speaking, the wide receiver room, Cooper's an improvement, but the other years we had OBJ and Jarvis Landry. Whether or not we knew that they were going to be what we thought they were, the perception was going in that, now it's going to all get fixed. Now it's all going to be, we figured it out. Now Baker and OBJ are on the same team and on the same page, and just it never clicked. Now you have Amari Cooper. You don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. Is it going to be Brissett? Is it going to be Baker? I really don't think it's Baker. I can't imagine that one's going to come, because they didn't do all this stuff.
Break-ed news. It's not going to be Baker.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That is as many times as Ian Rappaport's going to go on McAfee's show and say, "Oh no, it's still a possibility." It's there's no way that's a possibility, because Baker's going to show up and be like, "All right, really? I'm going to bring my own masseuses. Okay, I'll see you guys later." I'm waiting for the troll attitude to kick in, and he's just going to be like, "All right, do you guys mind if I order my own massage therapist to come in here?" What? That's wrong? What's going on here? Doing interview you guys thought one podcast was bad where I barely talked about being on the Browns. Wait till I do all the podcasts. So I don't know if that's a good idea. There's a reason why they excused him from mandatory minicamp. But yeah, Lamar Jackson coming back absolutely played into it. I think that was the key thing there, is the ambiguity between those two situations switched, and Lamar Jackson, just that athleticism. And also, again, like I said earlier, it's what they did this offseason, what they're getting back. Humphreys coming back healthier. I think they still have Peters there, so we'll see what happens if Peters comes back to full health and is good too. You have a second year of Owe, and he looked good last year. So again, it shows that athleticism as a defensive end is really important. And then you have they drafted Hamilton. I mean, literally, their draft was probably one of the better drafts in this draft class, which is kind of the downside for if you're a Browns fan, as you look at the Browns draft class, which wasn't bad, but missing a first-round pick doesn't help you. And they're missing 3. So at this point, it's and then they traded down in the second round. It's where this was a very shallow draft class, it felt like, at least in my perception, as far as whereas the 2 years prior, it felt like there was a lot more talent into the third round. When we got to the third round, I'm like, Winfrey's fun. Perrion Winfrey's a cool idea. Another sub 300-pound D tackle. but that's going to be what they like to target because they want to rush the passer and they want to get one of these guys to finally work. So take one every year, and that's fine. Like, take one in the 3rd, 4th round, see if one of them develops, and there you go. That's not a bad process. Be cheap on the D tackle front. I don't even know what I was saying. Oh, the reason why the numbers switched.
I do that all the time, Walter. It's just keep going. It's all good.
Oh no, you should see me when I went on the Browns Huddle podcast, which is now the Yard Dogs podcast. The one time I went on there, I was back when Jason Hand was just doing the show. I spoke for 2.5 hours. I think he spoke for 15 minutes, and he's like, "That was amazing. I didn't have to say a word. You just don't shut up. It's great." I could just book. I don't want to say anything. All right, where's Walter? And there you go. Hit the play button. It was literally, I think it was like it was a year ago in March. This was the first time I went on it, and he's like, I literally didn't have to say anything. This was great. And then we talked for an hour afterwards too.
Yeah,
so he's like, you don't shut up, man. It's amazing, but you just go.
I have to ask. I'm curious, just to wrap it up here. So you practice law in New Jersey, right? And you live in the New York, New Jersey area, correct?
Yeah, I live about 30 minutes from Meadowlands. I probably should be a Jets fan by just
where
I
am.
You become
a Browns fan?
I became a football fan late in life, and I didn't want to become a fan of the Jets or the Giants because I didn't want to be a fan of a team that played in New Jersey that called themselves New York, which explains why I'm not a fan of those two teams. It doesn't explain the other 30 teams in the NFL. But I was looking around at the time, and I'm like, well, what's a team that like really feels like it doesn't have anything going for it? Because at the time, the Seahawks were big, and I'm like, I like the colors of the Seahawks, but I feel like I'm a bandwagon fan. At the time, the Patriots are big, but again, bandwagon fan. I'm like, the Browns, on the other hand. No one's accusing me of being a bandwagon fan if I choose the Browns. And it worked out for the beginning part of it. Like, listen, 0-6. I sat through 0-16. I've been through the Hugh Jackson years. I don't think anybody could accuse you of being a bandwagon fan if you chose Hugh Jackson as your head coach. And you're like, Hugh Jackson.
Walter, I sustain that. That's sustained.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you definitely get your badge of honor there. If you,
Good years, though. It was almost more fun being a Browns fan because you saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, eventually it'll come to an end. Eventually they'll fire Hugh Jackson, right? They traded all these draft picks. They got us all these picks. Eventually it was going to get fixed some point.
Eventually.
Well, you never had to wait in the
draft. It
draft.
took a year longer than it should have. A half a year, at least. A half a year longer.
Yeah, they should have fired him when they fired Sashi Brown. That should have just been a clean sweep.
Yep.
But even still, I mean,
they still would have messed it up probably some way, shape, or form. So what is it?
Yeah, well, you look at who John Dorsey hired to be the head coach. It was Freddie Kitchens, and then we found out that was the worst idea ever.
It didn't matter.
I mean, like on the surface area, like the Freddie Kitchen hire was fun, right? You know, it was Baker's offensive coordinator, you know, and he said all these great things in the, you know, you wanted to grab a beer with him after practice, but it's just kind of nutty because you knew that he wasn't like the best candidate, but you also didn't know that he was drawing up plays in practice that he would never call in games. And like that was bad.
Well, you finally got to see a good offense in Cleveland in Baker's rookie year. And then you were just like, we can't let this guy go. We finally saw some flourish. We finally got a quarterback, and then like we got to hire a
give him whatever he wants.
I miss Greg Williams. I don't care. Come get some.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah, I know he would eventually fail up, but you know what? I love personalities, and Greg Williams had one. And wherever you're at, Greg Williams, thanks for that 5-3 finish. And you know what I'm saying? Hey, you cleaned up Hugh Jackson's crap. Unfortunately, we just refilled that pile with some Freddie Kitchens for a year.
So here's the problem with the Freddie Kitchens hire. The idea was to keep some consistency on offense, and that made sense to a degree because we saw Baker Mayfield play well that year when he took over the play calling. The downside was they got rid of everybody else on the coaching staff. Like literally
Ken Zampanese, who was the QB coach, and it was his playbook.
Yeah, well, and that was the key thing. And I remember Bob Wiley going on a show talking about that.
Yeah, he was mad too.
People were like, Bob Wiley, the O-line coach, sitting there being all crotchety, and then like now you look back and I'm like, Bob Wiley had the deets, man. He had the number. Set Hood. That's it. That's all I remember for that is he was like Zampese was the real orchestrator. I don't know why they gave Kitchens the job, and now we found out that was kind of the case. They should have at least kept Zampese at that point.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Freddie gave us probably the best line ever. If you don't wear orange and brown, you don't matter.
You don't matter.
That was probably my favorite line I've ever heard from a head coach.
I matter tonight.
Yeah.
We're gonna make everything about you, dude. We had such a great show. You know, we covered tons of topics.
Walter, I tried.
The-
You've been such a great guest. I tried to just, hide this, but I had to. It came out tonight.
Well, the world revolves around Ed. That's just how it is. Just accept it, Mac.
And Walter, if you didn't get enough of me, I'll be on the Barking Browns tomorrow night, 8:00, and then the Dog Chug 10:00 on Wednesdays.
Awesome.
Thank you. You've been awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Anytime you guys want, I just like talking. I don't shut up. So anytime you guys are like, we need to book somebody who doesn't shut up, maybe knows something about this more going on, the Watson thing, or just like his rambles, hit me up. I'm always, I'm not always available, but I'm available generally. But again, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the inclusion.
Walter, where can the audience find you?
Twitterverse, I'm at BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punch like a delicious drink you drink in the summer. Very easy to remember. I have no idea why that's still my name on Twitter and all my stuff all these years. It's just a throwback to a friend of mine. But I do stuff on the YouTube. If you type in Brojo Death Punch or Draft Vice on anything, you'll probably find my name somewhere. The draft and then Vice. Like Vice is in like, I can't believe I do all this drafting. And again, I also do a football. I do a legal commentary stuff called Punk Law 101. I used to do more podcasting with that, but generally speaking, when I just come up with an idea and like a subject matter that I talk about, I just stick it under a moniker. So it's like Draft Vice is all the football stuff, and then like Punk Law is all the legal stuff, and then the stuff with Deshaun Watson's going to be like, I'm going to get in trouble somehow. I don't just people are going to find out where I live. It's like. But no, other than that, I'm usually on the YouTubes, the Instagrams, all of the TikToks. The TikTok's been doing really. I did one video on TikTok and people really liked it. It's about the 24th Deshaun Watson case, apparently. By the way, that video, like I said before, you have to be very careful what you say on those websites. That one, people were really enjoying the euphemisms.
Okay, that's
a lot of euphemisms for that one. But thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for hopping on, man. It's great. And I think that's a great way to wrap up the episode. Thank you guys for listening, and go Browns.
Go Browns,
Go
baby.
Browns.
Go Browns.